Now, I'm going to start you off with a question here. Before we dive deep into The Thing Expanded, I have to know, when did you first see John Carpenter's The Thing, if you can remember, and what was your first reaction?
Now, I do remember very clearly. I was 16, school in England, and basically it was our sports day. And in England, we would say I bunked off. I think in America, you'd say I played hooky. I didn't do sports day. Me and a few friends went to his home where his dad had this amazing contraption, really rare and unusual for the time, called a VHS video recorder. And we kind of heard of this thing, but we'd never seen one. And his dad had two tapes. I think you can rent it. Two tapes had been rented, but they were Alien and they were The Thing. And we watched them both in that afternoon instead of doing sports day. And I can honestly say, although I didn't know it at the time, that was kind of a life-changing afternoon, given the way my career has gone and given the way my whole kind of sensibility in terms of film has gone. It was just fantastic. In a strange way, it's a bit of a shame I watched both at once because both films probably needed their own moment. But I returned to them both endlessly. And obviously they're very interrelated in the period they were made and the kind of sensibility they're expressing, but also incredibly different. And yeah, that was wonderful as well. But I think we saw Alien first because it was called Alien, and then we watched The Thing second. And you've got to remember, this was an era where there was no internet, so you didn't really look things up. You didn't know huge amounts. So I kind of knew very little about The Thing, but just saw this. I think being 16, I was very into Kurt Russell and his character, and that's kind of maybe what I took away from it. And it's only since going back and back and back, it's truly opened up for me.
Yeah, and just think, if you'd followed the rules that day and had done sports day, then you might not be here now.
Exactly. So it's better for my career. And I think we kind of returned, and no one noticed we'd been missing. We even got away with it. We never got found out. The whole thing is now my confession. The whole thing worked perfectly.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It was just the perfect storm. And hello to everybody. It is I, the Terrific Lady, otherwise known as Brandy. Welcome to Retro Horror School Talks, where I drag guests on here kicking and screaming to talk about retro horror and retro horror related topics. And with me, I have a first-time guest, Ian Nathan. He is a writer. He is a film journalist. He was involved in the documentary Aliens Expanded. And now he's decided that one documentary, I guess, is not enough, because now he is writing and directing the documentary The Thing Expanded, all about John Carpenter's movie The Thing. So welcome, Ian. It's so great to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's going to be a journey. I think we're going to go on now, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And for people who don't know, we love The Thing, and you're probably going to hear us gush about that for probably all of this podcast.
We might go off on a few tangents, but it's mainly The Thing.
Yes. So for people who don't know, Ian, can you give folks a quick overview of The Thing Expanded? So what it is and how it may be different from, like, say, just the usual retrospectives, behind the scenes stuff that people have seen.
Yeah, okay. Well, The Thing Expanded comes from the CreatorVC stable, who did the In Search of Darkness documentary. I think you've spoken about in the past. David Weiner's kind of masterpiece series on entire eras. And I think if anyone's watched any of those documentaries, they're kind of long form. We're talking hours worth of them. Their journeys and their epics. They're absolutely fantastic. But David and we both have a boss there called Robin Block, and he came to me a few years ago now and said, I want to do the same thing that In Search of Darkness does, but instead of doing an era, I want to do one film at a time. So imagine an epic thing like In Search of Darkness, but instead of doing the whole of the 80s, you're doing one single film. So it's sort of an inside-out version. And we began with Aliens, the James Cameron sequel to The Terrific Alien. And the idea was you just take the film and you follow the timeline. So you follow the journey of the film, sequence by sequence. We did about 20 chapters in Aliens. We're going to do a similar amount in The Thing. So you divide the film up into segments. And from each segment, you draw then back to do many things, really. You try to tell the story of its making. You try and interpret what's going on, sort of narratively, thematically, in terms of what we love about it. You investigate the imagery, you point out curios, you go off into sidebars that, for instance, with The Thing, I go off into a sidebar or potentially into a sidebar involving the original novella and the relationship of that book and Lovecraft and all those kind of things. So you build up this huge sort of complicated, really detailed kind of examination of the film in question. But in the end, you're only asking one question of it. You're saying, why do we love it? Why is it we return to The Thing or Aliens again and again and again? Why don't they go away? Why 40 years later are we having this conversation right now? That's the one question you're asking, but the answer is incredibly complicated and detailed. Will last probably about 4.5 hours. And the element of it is that it's a conversation between me, a huge fan of The Thing, and you, a huge fan of The Thing, because that's what we love to do. We were in a bar, we would sit there for 4.5 hours discussing The Thing.
Yes, we would.
We would. And that's exactly what the documentary is there for. It's that conversation you're going to have in the bar where you just go through it and go, wow, I love that bit, and just open it all up.
And there is so much to unpack with The Thing. It's like it's a big onion with a lot of layers and especially a lot of different themes. There's the theme of paranoia. There's a theme of just basically loss of control and identity. There's the theme of isolation. So what themes in particular stood out to you while you were doing the research and like diving into The Thing?
Well, I would say the whole journey is ongoing, about halfway through production as we speak now. So I'd say about 80% of our interviews are done. And we're very much into kind of the edit. And new things keep appearing to me. The onion keeps peeling back and back and back. I fear there may be an onion buried at the center of this onion. And I'll just keep going and going.
It's an onion inside an onion.
And you'll eventually be interviewing me and I'll be in some kind of insane asylum. It's a bit like that. And that's obviously the joy of the film as well. But as you say, thematically, it's incredibly strong. Paranoia, I think, is the overriding kind of sensibility of the film. I think this is really great idea that you could actually remove the creature from the film and there's still paranoia there. These men are already under pressure. They're kind of like, if the creature hadn't turned up, they may have still shot each other. Things are going wrong there already. So in a sense, the creature is kind of the MacGuffin. It's the thing that drives the plot. But the plot is really about what happens to men under pressure or what happens to human beings. It's an examination of humanity in a sense. And anyone who knows John Carpenter's work, I think he's a very humane director, but he's quite a cynical director as well. His view of the world is quite a dark one. So it's very much in interpreting that. And I think there are so many threads from that. In a sense, although it came out in 1982, it's kind of a 70s film. It's got that kind of feel of those kind of great 70s paranoid thrillers. I think, in a sense, it's about Nixon and about government and all those kind of things. It's about disease. As you say, it's about identity. It's about machismo. It's about leadership, what makes a great leader under pressure. And as anyone who's watched it, Gary, the Donald Moffat character, proves insufficient. And Macready, even though he really doesn't want to, takes charge because that's who he is. So there's that whole thread about that. I think it's about America. It may be a little bit, I'm not sure yet, but it may be a little bit about the Cold War. There's something about the Antarctic and the snow and, this idea of Americans in the kind of remote place. I think that plays into that. I think it's about our relationship with nature and very much in the sense of the creature right down to a microscopic level. So it's like one thing you draw from when you watch it is it makes you think about your own body. It makes you think about what happens if you're ill or what happens with the whole idea of germs and transformation and change that human beings go through. So this is a very profound idea about a mirror being held up to us biologically. there's those themes for now. I think it's probably about 400 or 500 more. And the more I keep exploring, I will find more. But I think essentially, I think you're right in the idea that paranoia is the overarching kind of sensibility of the film, and everything sort of feeds off that.
Yeah. You brought up like a lot of things too that I had never even thought of. Just like, wow, like now I'm gonna like have to go watch The Thing again and see like if I could pick up on a lot of the things that you have mentioned. Just like, yeah, onion inside an onion inside an onion.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, that's the joy of it, because Aliens is a terrific film, and I love it dearly. And I spent the last 3 years really kind of going into it. But Aliens, you get what you see is what you get. Yeah. The characters have to survive, and that's the point of the film. Apart from the movement of the creatures, nothing is hidden from you. You are in the heart of it with them. Whereas The Thing is the complete opposite. Everything is hidden from you. You do not know what's happening. You are just with MacReady, really. And by the end, you're not even sure you're with MacReady. Can you even trust him at the end? So there's this incredible sense of a film inside out, in that you don't know where the creature is. You don't know who to trust. You don't know what's coming up. And John Carpenter doesn't answer those questions. He asks a lot. Yeah. But he very deliberately doesn't tell you things. He only hints at them, gestures. And what that says is, do you want to solve this film? It keeps asking you. Do you want to know? Can you figure it out? But it won't ever let you. So it's a kind of torment. And of course, that's beautiful, because that's so intriguing, and it will be intriguing for decades and decades to come. It's a marvelous thing in terms of the power of a film.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Now my head's almost like starting to hurt.
Welcome to my world. This is where I am every day, going, oh God, I don't understand.
I think also then that's what's brilliant about this movie, because as humans, we want to answer these questions and we want to understand just like what's going on. And the fact that it doesn't answer those questions, I think I agree with you, as part of this film's like endurance is not a word. Endurance. It's lasting endurance.
Yeah. Oh, completely. It's not like David Lynch's films in a way. Yeah. And David Lynch would always say, the point is not to know. Yeah. The point is not knowing. That's the whole point of the David Lynch film. And I think Carpenter's the same. He's a different kind of filmmaker. He's much more he's not surreal. He's very realistic. But at the same point, the point is we don't know what's going on. And that's very frightening. And it's about how we deal with it. How do we cope with those things? And right down in terms of The Thing to a cellular level, how do we cope with the fact we could be breathing it in, or it could come from the person next to us?
Give it like everybody the side eye, like, are you the thing? Like, I don't know. I don't even know you. I don't know. And another thing that people love to talk about with this movie are the special effects. So the enduring, lasting special effects from the amazing Rob Bottin and his team. You had Stan Winston, too, that was even involved in a few of the special effects, most notably the dog thing, which still terrifies me to this day. I don't have to fast forward through it anymore like I used to. I used to have to fast forward through it. Now I could handle it finally. But were there any kinds of interesting things? Like, I know, like you said, that you're not completely all the way done with The Thing Expanded yet. You're still like it's still in progress. But as of now, have you discovered anything interesting or new that you've learned about the special effects on
endless things. What's great when you do this, in a sense, is that it's not only the story you tell, it's the people who tell it to you. And I've realized in documentary making, while it's a factual account, it is a performative art. It's about how people tell you stories. And that's one of the joys of it. And the guys that I've interviewed who worked for Bottin, in Bottin's team, are just wonderful. So a woman called Margaret Becerra, who was the paint artist. I've got a guy called Ken Diaz, who's just hilarious. And a guy called Eric Jensen, who's kind of line manager on. And I'm pursuing more people as well. But what you get is this picture of this incredible moment in film history where Rob Bottin, effectively a genius, 23 years old, and they were all in their 20s. They were kids, and who were locked away in this kind of separate studio to everybody else called Heartland. It's quite near, but it's part of Universal Studios, but it's not on the lot. It's separate. And for a year, they created those special effects, and in a sense, they were part of the storytelling process, because the special effects told the story of the creature, and they had to invent that as they went. But I just got this picture of these people having the best time of their lives. It's just, incredibly hard work, absolutely exhausting, never ending kind of, sense of how do we get from the drawing on the wall to a kind of finished scene. But the ingredients they used, some of the tricks they went, some of the maybe things you might frown on today in terms of the actual materials, real dog fur and such things were used. But just an incredible sense of adventure within that John Carpenter would come in and just be amazed at what they were achieving and what they were getting. But also, they fell miles behind the rest of the production. It was so hard that there was also a lot of pressure on them. But I just, because we were doing it segment by segment of the film, I'm taking each major transformation in turn. So you do the dogs, you do Bennings with his hands, the gloves in his hand, and then you do the spider head, which is just one of the great sort of moments in horror cinema. The blood test, of course, you're right through to the Blair Monster at the end. And then we're breaking each one down. And it's just brilliant stories. I'm not going to give too many away, but there were, Rob Bottin, he was a kind of mad genius. And they were doing the Norwegian base, actually, the Norwegian camp. Rob Bottin decides he wants real intestines, not human intestines, pig intestines. So they kind of get these pig intestines, and they obey Rob, and someone goes and finds pig intestines and brings it to the set. Just as the point where they were finishing interiors, so the whole of the kind of the things set on Universal Lot got locked up, and all the actors went up to Alaska to do the exteriors, leaving behind the pig intestines on the set, no longer a refrigerated set.
Ew!
And security found the special effects guys, because they weren't up in Alaska, going, we think somebody's died on the thing set. And they realized the pig intestines had just been left there. So Eric Jensen had to go back in, and he said, stench. So in a sense, they were kind of living the thing as much as they were making it.
Oh my gosh.
It's wonderful. That whole, because what you do is you tell stories within the story. And obviously there's the John Carpenter story, and there's the actor's story. And there's the story of these special effects guys, which is incredible. What they were doing and how they were doing it, and how towering, the results were, and how we still look at them in amazement today.
Yeah, I think all those things combined, especially as you mentioned earlier, is why we're still talking about this movie 40 some years later, which it blows my mind that it did so horribly upon its release. It's just I don't understand it now, why it did so horribly. It's just what do you think about that? Do you think that audiences were just not ready for just so bleak and holistic a film at the time?
You've got to think, films can be born into the wrong era, for the right reasons. 1982 was, a very special year in film, but it became a difficult year in film in the sense that Steven Spielberg made a film called E.T.
Mm-hmm.
And Steven Spielberg was going to make a small personal film that no one was going to be interested in. And he just went, it's one for me, guys. I'm not going to do any more blockbusters. I'm doing this intimate little story about a boy and an alien. And of course, we all know what happened. It became the biggest film of all time. And it wasn't only a film, it was a cultural shift. It changed America at that point in time. It was that powerful. There's all sorts of other arguments. Reagan was in government, and it was a different era. It was all about positivity. It's getting rid of the cynical 70s. But this film was so powerful, and it is an extraordinary film, E.T., that no one wanted to let it go. So instead of going to see new films, we're going back to E.T. again. So they go and see E.T. A week later, Blade Runner would open. Masterpiece.
Oh, yes.
Dark, replicants, impossible to fathom, brilliant film that I've gone back to endlessly in my life. But people go, I don't want to go and see a dark film about those people. I want to go and see E.T. again. Because they weren't willing to relinquish that feeling. It was a kind of an emotional addiction, if you want, to a certain thing that E.T. had given to people. And then a couple of weeks later, The Thing opens. And again, people are like, well, it's snow, it's the middle of summer, it's about evil creature, infection, nobody likes each other. I'm going to go and see E.T. again. That was the choice they were making. So in a sense, two brilliant films, Blade Runner and The Thing, came out at the wrong time. I kind of have a theory that if they had released it in the autumn rather than the summer, it would have a much better chance. I mean, it's a snowy film. And you have a weird sensibility I think when we go to cinema that we don't want to see snowy films in the summer. We kind of like, it's too much of a leap. I think that affected it. I also think it tested very poorly at the time because test audiences didn't get all the what we've been talking about, all the unanswered questions. They got very confused. I'm sure we'll talk about the ending in a little while, but the ending is very ambiguous. That frustrated people. So the studio lost a bit of faith with the film. They thought it was just going to be Alien again. They thought it was just a monster movie for adults. They didn't get all these kind of hanging notes, all this kind of ambiguity, all this paranoia. So they kind of gave up on it, which didn't help. And a lot of things were going on. I don't think the marketing campaign worked very well. And it just kind of got caught up with America in 1982. But you can't keep quality down. You can't keep masterpieces buried. And The Thing rose again, as did Blade Runner, thankfully. And we now look back on the summer of 82, kind of going, what were you all thinking, America? Movies you were being given. Tron came out, all these fantastic movies. And you were all saying E.T. 100 times. Right? So something we will cover in the documentary is that strange, flop turned into a masterpiece. Rediscovery, the idea of VHS. I discovered it on VHS. That was a big part of it. But it really broke Carpenter's heart. And I think he still has a slightly difficult relationship with the film. Not because he doesn't like what he achieved, just because it brings back a lot of difficult memories for him straight away. He's quite an emotional guy, Carpenter, in his own way. And he still can't quite reconcile. You go, it's a masterpiece, John. And he goes, yeah, I know, but why didn't they know then? He wrestles with that.
Yeah, like I could understand that because I remember seeing behind the scenes stuff and interviews and just how he poured his heart and his soul just like into this. And when you give like your all, you want it to do well. It's just like, it did well, John, just not in 1982. Yeah. Oh, it just, it's one of those things. But, Citizen Kane flopped, Wizard of Oz flopped. History is littered with fabulous films that found their voice eventually, but not in the moment. So I would have never known that the Wizard of Oz flopped.
Yeah,
wow,
big flop. Yeah. It's unthinkable now, isn't it? It's a cultural totem. It's a thing we all have in our lives. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's like, wow. And The Thing, it came out in 1982, and it is 2025 now. It's just like, why would a film that came out in 1982 still be relevant today in 2025, like something almost 43 years later?
Well, I think, you can say a great, it could be highfalutin for a second, a great work of art. What makes it great is how it keeps a conversation going with eras, new generations. There's something about it that new generations can find things in it. And I think that's very true of The Thing. Fundamentally, it's just a terrific film. One simple thing to say is, it's really well written. It's really well acted. The special effects are just sublime. And the whole construction of the idea, we talk about paranoia and fear, is so effective that it's unforgettable. Once it's in your system, you never forget it. So there is just simply that fact that it's just a great movie. But I also think there's something about how it serves as a metaphor. It becomes this sort of canvas on which we project things. I mean, during COVID, we would hear news reports of the virus is kind of mutating into a new strand, a new variant. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is the thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, well, what it's the thing has really come to life, because that's how the power of the thing. At the time of AIDS, people looked at the thing and said, is it a metaphor for AIDS? As I said, there's a kind of political subtext to it. Is it a Cold War film? Is it a film that looks back on Nixon and an America where trust was a very hard thing to come by, as Macready would say? And so I think it has this incredible power to communicate with each new generation. And plus, the way we look at films has changed, and the way we watch and enjoy films has changed. And in 1982, Stuart Cohen, the producer, said this to me. He said, look, there was no such thing as an Easter egg. There was no such thing as sort of people going online and drawing pictures and making charts of how the film works. People saw a film once and wouldn't see it again until it was on TV 4 years later or 3 years later. So you never worried or thought consciously about, this idea of fan interest or fan descriptions. That's come with home video and DVD and Blu-ray and eventually into streaming, that whole thing. And with the internet has come this quality of film appreciation where it's kind of forensic. We now not only kind of watch films and appreciate them, we break them down and we analyze them and we discuss with each other about what we think is happening. We interpret them. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful enjoyment. I mean, it baffles John Carpenter and some of these guys. What are you all doing? It's brilliant. And it's one of the reasons why I'm making these documentaries, is that this appetite for kind of film analysis is so rich and exciting. It's a glorious thing. I mean, it does send you a bit doolally. And at a certain point, you have to kind of step back and kind of go, they were just making a film and maybe they weren't thinking on all these different levels. But if you go online and just do a bit of, which I'm sure you've done, look at all the analysis of the thing, the kind of YouTube videos and the blogs and all these kind of different things, and podcasts, it's mind-blowing. The detail which people go into. When I made Aliens, I had to really make my peace with the fact that whatever thing you explore and go into, people have done it online to such a degree that you can't hope to compete. I've only got 4.5 hours of documentary, which is a lot, but it's a life work for some people, this kind of analysis. So it's a whole new kind of cultural way of enjoying films has kind of arisen with the internet and with the digital age, which I think makes us return to these films like The Thing and like Aliens and like Blade Runner and all these great sort of science fiction films and draw from them in a different way. But The Thing may be more than a lot, because as we've been saying, it's an onion in an onion. So it's gonna bring out the kind of the investigators online in profusion.
Yeah, and speaking of fans of The Thing, they are just very, as you mentioned, just very hardcore, like myself, just very just like analytic. I've done a few analyses of The Thing myself, but both in written form and in video form. So considering the fan base for The Thing, do you feel that there's this pressure? It's just like, oh, I've got to get this just right, or oh, I've got to just like make this so kick-ass in a way that fans will just like have their minds blown?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I'm glad I've made Aliens first in a sense. And it was a real kind of albatross on my shoulders that as you're making it, you're going, does everyone know all this? Do they care? Am I just telling them what they already know and think? And at a certain point, I kind of had to make my peace with this. I've written books, and it kind of it occurs to you when you write books as well. This kind of pressure of who cares? And what I sensed was, I think the important thing was to put the idea of I love this film first. And in a sense, the thing that I'm doing here is I'm not answering all the questions The Thing asks. That's impossible. I'm going to attempt to. I'm going to have some fun with that, and I'm going to throw some answers at you, but I'm not underlining it and putting a full stop at the end. What I'm trying to do is to remind you why you love it. And if I can do everything and answer every question and make all my points through the prism of this is why you love it, it comes to life. So you may watch bits and think, well, I know this, but I've got John Carpenter and I've got the actors and the behind the scenes people going, this is what we were doing. This is how we were doing it. And this is the crazy story behind that. And hopefully it will make that you love that piece of it even more.
Yeah.
The one great thing is, like, you come to the end of the thing expanded, and the first thing you should do is watch the thing. Yeah, that would be the perfect answer to me. Okay, I'm going to watch the film again now. And that's great because it's a companion to the film. It's a conversation with the film. And it's a conversation you have in a bar. It will try and open up new things to you. Don't get me wrong. I hope I'm going to tell you a lot that you didn't know. But overall, it's about a relationship with the thing. And I have a relationship with it, and you have a relationship with it. And we want to share that experience with each other. And that's kind of what the documentary is doing.
Hey, if you're digging this episode, why don't you go ahead and hit like and subscribe? I've got more horror deep dives and episodes of Retro Horror School Talks on the way. And if you want to keep the horror going even past this episode, I'm always posting extra stuff over on Instagram and Threads. Just look for Terrific Lady. Plus, if you're feeling generous and want to support the show, my Ko-fi link is in the description. All right, back to it. As we've been just talking about this documentary, I know that as a creative, and when I approach any project, there's a lot to do, a lot to put together. It's just like, how do you even, with as much as is going to be in this documentary, like, how do you even approach a project like this?
Well, yeah, they are, complex creatures, no pun intended. There's a lot going on. But what I have is an original structure. Came with the expanded formula, was that we were always going to take the film itself that we were expanding upon, that we're analyzing, and use that as your guide, use that as your journey line through the film. So it literally is, as I said, it's sort of kind of dividing up the finished film from start to end, from the UFO and the dog arriving at the beginning through to McCready and Charles at the end, and go through it segment by segment. And that gives me a timeline. It gives me a backbone to the film. And each chapter, as it were, I divide them into chapters. And there are 18 at the moment in the edit. That may come down, that may expand. But that's how many. There were 20 with aliens. And you condense and you kind of get you have to watch the flow at all times. But each segment, each chapter then will tell you what to talk about. So the opening one is the UFO entering the Earth's atmosphere. And that kind of immediately sort of tells you, well, this is the point I can do the origin story, not just of the alien in the film, but of John Carpenter's The Thing, of how that came about. So you talk about the Howard Hawks, Christian Nyby version in the 50s. You talk about the original Campbell novella and the kind of where they were born, the world they were both born into. So the idea of science fiction. I mean, context is always important. Then you talk about how John Carpenter came upon the project, how it was developed, what the alternative choices might have been. And then you bounce into the following chapters, and each will tell you a lot. So if it's a big special effects moment, it's the dogs or it's the blood test. Then you move into the world of Rob Bottin, and you draw into that. And you move out from that into kind of like questions of how biologically accurate could it be. I've spoken to an astrobiologist who was very interesting about what is conceivable, about the mimicry as a biological force. We ask questions like, do you ever see the thing in the thing? I don't know if you ever thought, do you ever see it? And there's not an answer to that question.
No.
One of my interviews, a guy called David McGoldrick, a writer, he says, you never do. It may not even have a form, or maybe it once did, but it's evolved to such an extent that it's now just based on DNA of other things. Mimicry is its sole purpose and survival mechanism. So that's kind of where we kind of get out to. So it's almost like reversing the onion. You build layers, and you have an idea from the film, the chapter, and then you add layers onto it, and you go off at tangents. Some of them are as simple as how are people cast, the rehearsal process, how the actors got involved. Some of them will be like we've been talking about, 1982 and the film failing. And my whole final chapter, or certainly the narrative part, is going to be just on the final scene. It's just on the McCready child's moment. And everybody analysing what they think is going on, interpreting it in their own way. And of course, the point you want to make is, it's up to you. It's not, there is no answer. It's up to you. So it's a wonderful structure in the sense of you can do all things. You can be really analytical. You can be really arty and thematic. You can be really anecdotal, and you can be very making of. You can do all those different things within this construct of expanding upon the original film.
And on the flip side, with any kind of project comes challenges. Has there been any challenges that you've encountered? Maybe people that you wanted to talk to, but you haven't been able to get yet? That kind of thing?
There are challenges, and there are a couple of people we're still chasing, and some other people I would like to get to comment on it. I've still got time, so I won't name names or anything yet because I don't want to curse my production. There are other different kinds of challenges. Obviously, when you build a picture up, you don't just use clips from the film. You use other photographic materials, and you use sort of storyboards and things. But Rob Bottin, the special effects master, banned all photography from his effects studio.
Oh, wow.
There are no shots, very, very few shots of the actual effects studio because he didn't want to give the secrets away. He didn't want people to think about it as a special effect. That was the last thing he wanted. They did it. That was the wrong kind of sensibility. So they don't exist. So it's hard to illustrate that in a sense. What's behind the special effects is because Bottin kept it a secret. I know I've got the stories, but illustrating certain points becomes complex. And there's just, as we've been talking, the sheer brain terror of trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
I've been doing diagrams. I got this kind of corkboard here. It looks like I'm a serial killer. I've been trying to draw the root of the infection. The dog arrives. Then does Bennings get infected here? Does Norris get infected here? Dog is incinerated, but then goes into the storeroom. And this kind of drawing gets more and more. Blair is in the heart. All these things are going on. And then suddenly you think, I kind of got it. And then something occurs to you and you go, well, that's all wrong then, isn't it?
Then you just tear it all down.
It's infected there and not there. And it's mad. But that's also the fun of it, is that you're kind of going on this crazy journey and you'll figure things out. And it is complex as a documentary, but it should never feel it. And that's a real challenge. You as a viewer should never be going, oh, God, this is so complicated. But when you stop and think about it, you think, God, I did such great things. It was so kind of, fascinating. So it's you've got to almost do something. You've got to do something really complicated, but pretend it's simple and show it's simple. And that's all about music, and it's about how you edit it. It's about how you tell your story.
Yeah.
And if you get those things right, then people don't notice it's 4.5 hours. One of the great compliments that Aliens Expanded, as I've got from the release of Aliens Expanded, is that people don't know how long it is. They go, I just sat down to watch a bit of it, and I watched all of it, and I didn't notice the time pass. And I think, well, that's it. That's fantastic, because you're in it, you're enjoying it, and you're part of the conversation. So that's what you're trying to do. Whether I succeed or not is down to you, the viewer. But it's quite a tough journey to get there. But if it was easy, it wouldn't be worth doing. That's the other part. If it was a breeze, somebody would already have done it. So it's meant to be hard. Yeah.
And speaking of one of the things that is still a topic of conversation almost 40 plus years later, we're at the ending. We're finally going to talk about the ending now.
Right.
There have been so many fan theories that have come out that Charles is the thing, and MacReady gave him, it was gasoline in that whiskey bottle. How MacReady was the thing. How neither of them are the thing. There's just the whole absence of breath means Charles. There's just way too many fan theories out there about this. But I want to hear your personal thoughts. Do you think MacReady's the thing? Do you think Childs is the thing? Do you think neither of them are the thing? Do you think they both are?
I should preface this by the fact that I do not know the answer, and there also is no answer. Well, right. John Carpenter hints he has an answer, but we'll go to his grave with it. And he's right, because as soon as you have an answer, you ruin the film. The film is just, what's beautiful is there is no answer. As I was saying, I've been doing an infection timeline, and one of the things I am struggling with is I can't make it MacReady. I can't get to the end and make it MacReady. The only way I feel, and there'll probably be people who watch this going, well, you're wrong because. That's absolutely fine. And I applaud that and encourage it. The only way I can figure things out, for MacReady to be the thing at the end, he has to be attacked off screen after the blood test. And you rarely get him off screen after the blood test. And the only creature I think that can attack him, this is how deep I'm going, is either the blood drips from the blood test sequence have become another thing and gone away and done something, or they're flowing around somewhere and they jumped on him. Or in the dog scene, because I don't know if you remember, there's a dog thing that goes to the ceiling, it leaps up, and you never quite figure out whether it went through the ceiling or not. Maybe it was burned, maybe it wasn't. This is another big fan theory. Now, if it did go through the ceiling, that means there's another thing about, apart from Blair and all the kind of ones we know. Has that got to MacReady at the end point? So that I can't quite. The problem with all these kind of fan theories a little bit is you start to build things into the plot that aren't necessarily there. You say, is there gasoline in the bottle? Well, we've never seen gasoline be put in the bottle. There's no sort of sense. There's another theory that maybe the blood test doesn't work, and maybe the blood test isn't this. I think you have to accept some things in the film as factual, just to keep the film together. So I take the blood test to be a real thing, and it does work. It does tell you who's the thing or not. Childs is a different case. There's a lot of ambiguity around Childs. There's a whole imagery of the coat, and there's a kind of coat rack, and the coat's there and it's not there. But I think Childs is meant to be ambiguous. That's why he walks out of the plot and walks back into it with the single purpose of us going, well, what's happened to him? Where was he? Did he encounter Blair at some point? That's the purpose. By the scene, I don't know about the breath thing. Carpenter doesn't like that very much.
Yeah.
It's that angle. It's that angle of light. And the fire's here, and I think it's just chance. There is a kind of swig thing. If you notice through the film, when Blair is given drink and never swigs, there's the vodka is left for Blair in his hut. Only MacReady drinks it. And, I was just maybe drinking is a sign of humanity and not thingness. But then does Childs actually take a swig? I don't know. There is a few. I asked everybody I've interviewed, I've asked this exact question to, because I want a load of answers to it. And some people have said, I want to believe they're both human. They're both going to die, but it's the sacrifice. But then if other people goes, well, if it is Childs, say, then the thing is still there. The thing just froze with the snow and will be de-thawed when a rescue chopper arrives. It's there was a whole script written for a sci-fi channel sequel that was developed with Frank Darabont and this writer David McGoldrick, in which they do pick up from that point of the two guys frozen.
Oh wow! And
then they expand a whole new story. It ends up in New Mexico. It's a great story. So I think you can find the scripts online. I think don't go on that, but it's really cool ideas about where you could take the idea without spoiling the original film. Without ruining. So they didn't change anything. They didn't get a new UFO or do anything silly like that.
Yeah.
And there's the prequel, of course, with all its kind of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But they posited this idea of two things. A frozen thing is in one of those corpses, and they got hold of the MacReady tapes. You see them doing the recordings, and they learn a lot from the MacReady tapes. There's a few other little secrets, but they'll be revealed in my documentary. I hope someone actually, if they watch our documentary, someone like Sci-Fi or one of the big TV companies, suddenly go, where is that script? And go away and make it. I would love for that to happen. They would go, oh, hold on. Maybe there is room for a thing sequel on TV. We're getting an Alien TV thing. We've had Andor, and we're getting Blade Runner TV. Let's have the Thing TV as well. That'd be kind of a great kind of bonus. But So what do I think? I kind of do think that they're both human. I'm not 100%, and I go back and forth. But I like that idea of companionship, the kind of the light in the darkness. One question I've asked other people is like, do you see the ending as optimistic or pessimistic? And people kind of go, oh, well, hold on. And my theory being, yeah, they're probably both going to die, and one might be the thing. But if you take it as they're both human, then they've saved humanity. They've sacrificed themselves basically to save mankind. And no one will ever know. Yeah. It's the ultimate noble sacrifice. And that's kind of beautiful to me. And so I hold on to that answer. But is that the right answer? Who knows?
Yeah, I still go back and forth about it. I've heard things where the video game is canon. I've heard things along those lines. And if you believe that it's canon, then okay, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't played the game. Okay, 3, 2, 1. McCready survives. I don't know how and I don't know why, but he does. So, but in video game world. But going back to the ending, me personally, I have always just because of the ambiguity surrounding Childs, he's very suspicious to me. So I've always believed that he was the thing, not because of the whole gasoline in the bottle or anything like that. It's just I had my eye on him. So yeah, but like you said, there is going to be you ask 20 different people who do you think the thing is at the end, you're going to get 20 different answers, and that's just that's the beauty of it.
That is beauty. It's whether you believe the story you're being told, so you believe the blood test, you believe those elements, or if you don't, if you think the whole thing is sleight of hand, then McCready could have been turned right back when he goes missing in his own hut. McCready could have been turned then. So you can read it and interpret it in many different ways. It's really interesting when you talk to the filmmakers. They weren't thinking like this because it wasn't an era where this kind of thinking went on. For them, it's very much a film in the moment. It's about what's happening right in front of you. The puzzle is the survival. How do we deal with the now? They kind of want to go, you don't need to think about where the clothing comes from. It's just a torn. You don't need to think about was Fuchs taken or not. You don't need, it's a hint. It's a flavor in the background. At what point did Blair get turned?
Yeah.
The guy I would love to have spoken to, sadly he's passed on, is the screenwriter Bill Lancaster. Because I imagine he had to think about this probably a lot more than anyone else. Mm-hmm. The idea of the location of the creature and who was what when. I would love to have just said, well, what did you think? What was going on as you mapped it all out and created the story with Carpenter? But did you have an idea constantly? And because the editor didn't. I've spoken to Todd Ramsey, the editor. He's going, no, I just followed the storyboards and I followed the script and we kept things going. I'm like, so it's interesting. There's a kind of a different camps thing. There's a camp of filmmakers and there's the camp of fans. And they don't necessarily think about the film in the same way.
Yeah. And so whenever this documentary, months down the road, finally gets finished, it's out there for consumption. What is one thing that you hope that fans and people that watch it, what's one thing or feeling that you hope they take away after they watch this documentary or while watching it?
One thing I do hope, obviously, fundamentally, is that people really enjoy it. That's its purpose, is to be enjoyed. And as I say, I don't want people to feel like it's definitive, and that might sound like a negative. While I was making Aliens Expanded and wrestling with all these things, I went to see a talk by Thelma Schoonmaker, the great Martin Scorsese editor, and she was talking about the fact she was editing the Powell and Pressburger documentary he had done, and she said something that was just such a great thing to hear at the point I was in the documentary. She just went, "A great documentary does not answer questions; it only asks more questions." And I just went, God, that's what I needed to hear. That's it. And so that's one thing I hope. I hope that actually you go away thinking about the film more, not less. It's not going to complete the thing for you. It's just going to open it up even more. And hopefully be hugely entertaining in doing that, and hopefully tell you things about the making of and the opinions and the personalities of all the people involved, of course, and to give you a picture of potentially what might be happening in it, certainly. But actually, I just wanted you to ask more questions. I want you to go away and talk even more. And if someone else down the road feels they can make a better documentary, then so be it. It's not about saying this world is ended. And but I want to be definitive as well, in the sense I don't want to be definitive about the story and the thing, but I want to be definitive in the sense of it being a historical document. That's what I do. It's 43 years old now. It may be 44 years old by the time it's completed and people are watching it. With the best one in the world, a lot of the people involved are getting older, and I think we need to make a statement. And one of the purpose of these documentaries I'm making, and all of CreatorVC, David's documentaries, is to kind of put a flag in the ground and commemorate and say this is kind of a document in praise of these films, in praise of the film I saw when I was 16 and the experience of watching it, and in praise of fandom that has followed it. It's just saying this needs to be on record, and we'll have this record forever. And I want it to be that as well. I know that sounds a bit grand, but I want it to stand the test of time and have all these voices on it. And I think I did that with Aliens, and I hope I'm going to do that with The Thing. And you just have it for you. It's there whenever you want to watch The Thing and have a chat about The Thing. The documentary will be there for you.
And so in a way, it's also just like curating a piece of horror history, just to have all the stuff on here, documentary about The Thing, all these different voices. So just like Carbon is spaced out in horror history for, say, spectacular, not just horror film, but film in general.
Oh, completely. And it's we live in an age of where streaming and film has become very transitory. And I fall into this trap myself. Something comes up I'm interested in. I think, I'll wait for streaming. I won't go down to the cinema to see it. And a little voice might go, what are you doing? That was how you grew up. You would go and see everything. And it's a bit of a tragedy to me that film is becoming unimportant. Not that people aren't enjoying films. I'm not trying to say that they do, but that kind of permanence they have. And in a way, I think what we're trying to do at CreatorVC is sort of put a bit of cement around it and fix it and build a monument and say, no, these are great films and they need to have an edifice erected toward them. And that's what we want to do, and to remind people that it's a great art form and it's hugely influential, and these people have done incredible work. And the reason we're talking now is the reason why I need to make the documentary. Passion endures, and I've got to try and make it endure longer.
Absolutely. All right. Now, I've got a little thing I do on every one of my shows called the Retro Lightning Round. So I have questions related to The Thing. So just go with your gut. You can you can give short answers, or you can expand on your answers as much as you want. All right.
Okay.
All right. First question: your favorite creature design in The Thing?
I do go back and forth on this a bit because obviously I've been looking at it a lot. I would say that the spider head is iconic, because especially the first time you see it. Mm-hmm. But increasingly, the transformation I've got really into is one of the lower key ones, and it's Bennings with the gloves in the snow and that alien kind of cry. Yeah, it's almost a poetic moment. It's kind of like it's the moment where, as fabulous as all the other ones are, but and so Peter Maloney really acts it well. He sort of holds his head like this, and he comes up, and you really get a sense. It's a bit like when they first find the space jockey in Alien, before we had all the prequels and all that stuff, and you just went, God, what is going on in the universe? The universe is bigger and scarier and older than I could possibly understand. It makes you feel very small. And I look at that Bennings moment, and he roars in a sound that is unearthly. That's the only word you can, and you kind of go, where has this thing come from? What is the world behind it? What is the universe behind it? And how vulnerable mankind is in the face of that. And I think that's just such a beautiful moment.
Beautiful. Yeah. I never thought about it that way. Like, you're bringing up just new things for me to just think about and ponder. So what is your favorite character or performance in The Thing?
God, it's such a great ensemble, and I dearly love Kurt Russell in it as MacReady, as you have to. He was the first one I responded to. And the more I watch his performance, the more subtle it becomes. he's kind of like a detective in it, swigging the whiskey and figuring it out. But I think you kind of have to set McCready aside in a certain kind of way and look at all the others. And Wilford Brimley as Blair is so good and so real. I mean, they're all real, but he's so kind of interesting because he really understood that idea of when you're acting, a character like Blair, the audience should not know whether he is the thing or not at any one moment, yet always have the could be in the air. When he's smashing up the radio, there's something Blair would do, but there's also something the thing Blair would do. And I can't tell the difference. And his performance is so good. There's a great bit where Matt goes out to him and he goes, let me back in. I'm all right now. I'm okay now.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't let him back in. No.
Yeah. No.
Stay in the hut. And it's a wonderful bit of really eerie acting where he's almost sucking us in. He's going, oh, yeah, poor guy. He's so cold out on his own. But then you're kind of going, he doesn't sound right. He sounds a bit uncanny. And so I really give it to Wilford Brimley. I think he's so good in the thing.
I'm going to do a tangent and give my flowers to Donald Moffat, who played Gary. I had really gravitated towards Gary as a character over the years, especially because I think he is a good leader in a sense that he knew when to step back and relinquish his control to somebody else. It's just to me, I feel that is the mark of a good leader, is knowing just when you need to step up and when you need to step back.
Actually, this morning I was chatting to my editor. We were looking at some scenes. And there's a scene really early on where Donald Moffat just puts on his coat. And my editor was going, that's really good acting. Just the way he puts on his coat tells you he's been there a long time. He just does it unconsciously, holds it on, pulls it together. And you go, that's not a guy who's put on a costume for the first time this morning. That's a guy who's been in the Antarctic for too long and just puts on the coat. And I thought, that's a really good point. It's a great bit of incidental acting that shows you what a quality performance is.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Now, as far as scenes go in the movie, what do you think is the most underrated scene in the thing?
I think I would say scenes, but what I think is underrated is how much is going on before the dog, sequence. So in a sense, it has not a lot happens on the surface of the film for probably about 25 minutes. The dog arrives and the Norwegian gets killed and they're all a bit like, what's going on, flying out to the base, all that kind of stuff. But really, it's about undercurrent at that point. And there are really interesting scenes that really are doing my head in because I'm not sure what's going on. And the whole argument, when does Bennings get assimilated, infected? Because if you watch closely, Bennings gets really obstructive, to everything. From the moment the dog jumps up at him to he's saying, the weather's bad, don't go in the helicopter. He keeps going, we shouldn't do that. And you start to look at it and start going, is that the thing disrupting the plans? Is it already plotting amongst them in human form? I don't know, because there's obviously the storeroom sequence, which kind of contradicts that. So there's lots of really interesting sort of undercurrents within the film that I think are very underrated before all hell breaks loose with the dogs.
Oh, wow. And speaking of, there's these people could be the thing, and there could be undercurrents of that, but then the thing might remember, oh, wait, I've got to act like this guy would. I've got to act human. Quit giving away your plans so early.
It's such as soon as you start thinking about what is the thing thinking, it just gets a bit, again, mind-boggling. It's does it have all the memories of the when it's assimilated? Therefore, you can draw upon those. Is the real person in there somewhere, or are they a completely new being? It just gets a bit kind of really mind-numbingly complicated. Try and unravel. So you start thinking about the acting performances, how they work with that, those kind of mysterious concepts, and how they develop it. Like Richard Masur as Clark, who kind of looks like he's got the thing even before the things arrive. He's already weird and an outsider and a bit creepy. But he's a human throughout. You learn that. So it plays that so well, that paranoid note of how would you know? What is there a way of, beyond the blood test, is there a way of knowing? They never actually do something, and some of the actors talk about this. Nobody tests someone by asking them about a memory. Oh, your first wife. What was her name again? Nobody does that. But then would the thing have that to call on? Would it have the kind of memories? Because it has all the DNA memory of all these species it's traveled through and gathered. It's, as I say, the more you think about it, the more insane you become.
I know. Oh my gosh. You have brought up so many things. It's just like, wait, now I'm going to have to go back and watch this. And now, wait, I have to think about this now. It's just like, wow, they don't like ask the memory-based questions. Like, I'm going to ask you something only you would know. What did we have for breakfast yesterday? And again, last retro lightning round question. You're going to fill in the blank. Okay. John Carpenter's The Thing is blank.
Is extraordinary. And I say that in terms of every kind of, usage of the word extraordinary, brilliant and era defining, beyond ordinary in the sense, not just an ordinary film, but an ordinary idea of the world and genre. And those special effects are truly extraordinary, even for monster effects. They're a step above because they literally show you things you could never have imagined. I can imagine a werewolf, and I can be very impressed when it's done like an American Werewolf in London or The Howling. But when I watched The Thing, I could never have imagined those things. My brain could not have come up with them. And I think that's as close as you are to the Stephen King definition of terror. Stephen King says that terror is the ultimate thing to achieve in the genre. Terror is the knock on the door. Horror is when the door opens, because whatever you write or whatever you make as a filmmaker, you're never as good as the human imagination. You're never as good as what they're thinking is on the other side of the door. And that will always be the case. So you keep the door shut as long as you can. But I think Rob Bottin got pretty close to terror, the thing I could never imagine, the thing beyond. And it might be what he was hospitalized at the end of the film, and it might have been that he probably took himself to some very strange places.
Probably so.
But the key to it is what is so brilliant about the way Rob Bottin works, the film works, is that he does those things, but he does them in a way that I would call realistic. So even though everything is created and envisioned is beyond your imagination, it's extraordinary. He does it with sense memory. So he does it with sort of tactile notions. We know what sticky is. We know what slime is. We know what sort of slugs are like. We know how flowers unfurl. We know what rotting carcasses are like. We know all these things because they're sort of buried into our reptile brains and to be afraid of because we know how diseases work. We know what infection is. So all those things are very real to us as human beings. Yet he kind of remixes them in a kind of extraordinary way that they're both familiar and utterly alien at the same time.
Yeah. Oh boy, does he. Oh man, it has been an absolute blast having you on to talk about The Thing Expanded. So once again, Ian, thank you very much for coming on today to talk with me about The Thing and The Thing Expanded. I really appreciate it.
Oh, great pleasure. It's a thing in my head, and you just push me a little bit. I start going, and I'm like, here it is.
And that's it. You're not going to hear any complaints from me. No. So where can people go to find out more about The Thing Expanded and even just any of your other work?
Yeah, well, in terms of CreatorVC.com, thethingexpanded.com, the URLs. We've got a wait list now. In terms of how we work, we do a kind of pre-order situation, which is now done with. That raises our budget. But once the film is finished, we will do another sale, and that's the point. Get on your waiting list, get into it, and come back to us. We don't actually have a date yet for you, but stay alive to the CreatorVC and to The Thing Expanded. You'll be able to jump into the sale and hopefully, buy my film. I'm on IMDb. I've written lots of books. So if you go onto Amazon and look up my name, you'll see other stuff I've done in the slower medium of print. I've written about everything from Lord of the Rings to Quentin Tarantino. So I'm around about. You can find me. But yeah, come and join us. The thing, I think it's an extraordinary journey. I hope we're creating something, that lives up to the film. And it's, even if you completely disagree with my findings, that's okay, because we're having a conversation and we're enjoying it. And as I say, I'm only asking questions to answer, or to ask more questions. Yeah, that's the point.
Yep, I've already got mine. I hit the pre-order, so I'm set. I'm taken care of. Now it's just the waiting is the hardest part, just as it always is.
It always is. And I'd say to everyone who's backed us already, have patience. I know you want to see it. Yeah. It's hard work, and it takes a time, and we're working hard to make it as good as it can be. I can't put it out there compromised. I could never do that.
No.
So just have patience with us, and it will be worth it, I assure you.
It is definitely going to be worth it. So thank you, everybody, for watching this episode of Retro Horror School Talks. Like, share, subscribe if you want to keep learning more about horror, your favorite horror movies, and about John Carpenter's The Thing. Class is dismissed, and I will see you next time.